So, video games. I love them, and there are a lot of people on the planet who also love them. But narrowing such a thing down as your own favourite video games can be extremely difficult, especially considering that all top 10 lists are just simple opinions anyway, and people always disagree with that. But in case you can tell from the rather enriching quality of my videos, I don't really need to please people. I'm basically a review channel anyway, so I'm kinda used to people's opinions not being the same as my own. Having said that, this kind of list is the one I'm really worried will get on people's nerves, so let's get some honorable mentions out of the way first. Final Fantasy VII and Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, both often regarded as two of the best video games ever made. Do I like the two? Yes. Would I put them on my own list? Well, no, because they're in the honorable mention section in the intro of the video, so, yeah. Also, some quick rules I had to set myself for this list. No games that I got from the XBLA and such have a physical copy of the game in question, which I got really lucky on, and I do have them all here. And as is tradition, one game per franchise. I'm just putting a spoiler warning right here, so if you don't want to bother with that, then you best turn away from this video now, just click off. With all that said though, these are my top 10 favourite video games ever. At number 10 we have Dead Space 2. So, you probably shouldn't expect another proper horror game on this list, especially because I don't really play many horror games. Despite all this, there's just something really special about the Dead Space series as a whole. Sure, not many people like it as a horror series because when it comes to horror, there are many different types of fans for different types of horror. As I mentioned earlier, I don't play many horror games, but this is one of the few games that has genuinely scared the shit out of me. And do note how I said genuinely instead of literally because that would require cleanup otherwise, and that's just kind of gross. Anyway, I played the first one and I really enjoyed it. The horror aspect, being in space, playing as a main character in the first game, which was very rare for the late 2000s to be honest, and combined with the sound effects and creepy monster designs, it was all just a great touch and a great package. Granted, there wasn't a huge variety of monster types, and the missions weren't too complicated beyond grab a thing from the place and take the thing to a different place. The sequel saw all of that and improved, adding a more visceral, pun intended, experience along with the psychological aspect of things that made it all the more interesting. There were more monster types introduced, we find out more about the monolithic myth that is the marker, we got an expanded story, a few references to religion, Isaac got a speaking voice beyond just his grunts and screaming, and the game's signature limb shooting mechanics were taken to new heights as well, with the added bonus of being able to impale your enemies in this one. Sure, that does kind of take away from all the limb hacking and such, but trust me, it's so much more fun to do the limb hacking. The monster designs new and old are leagues above how they used to look, and are more often than not, they're genuinely terrifying, from the smallest creepy crawlers to the biggest, most brutish monsters. Which is kind of a pun because there is a giant monster called a brute, which you fight quite a lot. You fight a lot of those. At the heart of Dead Space 2, however, is the story of main character Isaac Clarke grieving over the loss of his girlfriend Nicole. He's plagued by her death at every turn in the game, and seeing his psyche shatter as he tries to carry on and destroy the marker to save what little of humanity is left is kind of gut-wrenching from time to time. In essence, everything that I liked about the first Dead Space was improved massively in the sequel. The more mental, psychological aspects, more monster types, bigger boss fights, and the small tweaks that make it leaps and bounds over Dead Space 1. If, like me, you don't like horror-based media that much, but are willing to try this game out, then give it a shot. It's kind of worth it, in my opinion. So we have number 9, and get ready for a journey here. It's Prototype 2, but I got the Blackwatch Collector's Edition, so... To put that into context, that is a disc in a box, in a slip, inside another box, inside another slip, so... yeah. Anyway, this game is another case of a sequel being a lot better than the original, and it's a damn shame that that's the truth because of what would happen afterwards to the company, despite really good sales and reviews. But the developer, being Red Skull in this case, would sadly go under not long after the game was released. I didn't want to get out of the way though, that I feel like both Prototype games are absolutely underrated gems in the sandbox genre. The reason why they're so underrated? People bitching and moaning about the graphics, and that's literally it. Besides that, Prototype 2 fixed a lot of problems that the first game had, and as much as I loved the first game, it did have its flaws, much like pretty much every other game on this list, including my top one. But at least I'm aware of the fact that none of these games are perfect, so there you go. Stick it, basically. Anyway, Prototype 2 offered a lot more improvements over its previous game, better combat, more fun ways to kill stuff, side missions that added more, and a more likable main character in James Heller, sorry to Alex Moser fanboys, and perhaps most importantly, more ways to just dick around with your powers. Seriously, there's nothing more fun in this game than just causing some havoc to someone's helicopter only to rip a cannon from a nearby tank and use that cannon to blow up the helicopter. In terms of the powers you get, there are also improvements, with the new tendrils in place of the muscle mass power from the first game being the most noticeable change, but what I like more are the little aesthetic differences. Whereas most of his powers look like, more insect-like and sinewy, Hella's versions look more like military stuff, as you can see there. They have a really nice bright red glow, and it contrasts the black, moody look of what Alex had. I quite like the more additional story aspect of things as well. In the first game, you had a fairly stereotypical conspiracy theory spliced with the main character who wakes up with amnesia. It's sort of those known as the Legend of Zelda effect. Prototype 2's Hell is a much more complex hero type. He's just a guy that wants to get revenge for his wife's murder at the hands of the virus outbreak from Mercer between the events of the second and first game. Heller himself is actually a former Blackwatch soldier, and Blackwatch are the main villainous faction in the Prototype series. Becoming friends with Alex's sister Dane to help you along doesn't either, making a pretty cool dynamic between the two, especially when it comes to the BlackNet side missions. Really, really fun. I also kind of like the red zone, yellow zone, green zone thing that the game's got going on. It takes you to the different segments of New York with different environments, enemies, and levels of threat, and it makes it feel a bit more expensive in a way. And that is what a sandbox game should be. Prototype 2 is a mixture of the grey, expansive nature of what a sandbox can be, with the addition of new enemy types, about protagonists, and more keys of story, and just a much more fun element to things, especially with the gameplay. It's the ultimate anti-hero sandbox experience, and it's a good definition of how a sequel can improve on what came before it. At number 8 we have Bioshock Infinite. So, changing where a game is set is one thing. Changing all of the little aspects of that game to make for an entirely different feat, all on its own. So to call this, I worded that really terribly in the script. Changing all the little aspects of said game makes for an entirely different feat all of its own. So, I should have said that, I misworded it. Anyway, so to call this the third entry of the Bioshock series might seem a bit strange. You might remember that the first two parts were set in an underwater city of sorts, with bathyspheres taking you to different parts of the said city. In Infinite, you're in a new city named Columbia that's in the frickin' sky. Plasmids are replaced by Vigors, and your new hero is Booker DeWitt, and your main mission is to rescue and then help a young woman named Elizabeth from the clutches of a large mechanical creature called the Songbird, whilst also going against the regime of the deranged and fanatical father Zachary Comstock. Yeah. There are a few factions involved as well, with Comstock's own shoulders being the high-class type in contrast to the Vox Populi, the often mistreated underclass, which mostly consists of people from other races and minorities. The game is a standout in the Bioshock series, not just because it's in a different element, but it touches upon things of racial acceptance, religious fanaticism, and identity. The sad thing is, I really can't say too much else about the story of the game, because whilst I did put a spoiler warning at the start of the video, the ending to this one will send anybody through a loop, so that's the main thing to experience for yourself if you do choose to play it. With that in mind, let's talk more about the game and the differences to the previous Bioshock entries. So, the addition of Elizabeth adds for an interesting new element to the gameplay. She can give Booker ammo, health, salts, which is basically the new version of Adam, I think it is, which he uses for plasmids, and money, should he need it. But the main thing that she brings to the table is time traveling and psychic powers, being able to open ways to new areas of the game. In terms of the game's weapons, there is some new stuff as you can choose between Comstock and Vox-style weaponry, with each side having different aspects of the guns. But what's easily the game's most crucial difference to the previous two is the Skyhook. Not only does it open many new possibilities for entertaining melee combat, but using the Skyhook to travel on rails is just amazing. It makes for a great flow in the gameplay. You mix that up with the new Vigors that you have, which are just so much fun to use, and you can, it can make you feel damn near untouchable. I will say that having fewer Vigors compared to the Plasmids just makes them feel more special, not to mention the new gun upgrades, which whilst they don't feel as special, there is still a difference. But that could be chalked up to the game's vast improvement on storytelling. The first Bioshock was good, and Bioshock 2 is underrated in my opinion, but Infinite took the best of both and added its own elements to make for a truly special gaming experience. Touching upon more mature themes like racism and the class system was a bold move, and it truly pays off for the game's story. I hate that I can't touch more upon that, but you really should give it a go for yourself to see. And number 7, we have this, and it feels kind of heavy. There's only one disc in it. Why does it feel so heavy? Anyway, throughout this entire thing thus far, I brought up Heroes. I apologize if this is dusty, by the way. It's on the PS2 shelf. Well, it's in the PS2 section of my shelf. I haven't touched that game in a while. But yeah, throughout this entire thing thus far, I've brought up heroes, be they regular superheroes or the more anti-hero type, but those are pretty much video game exclusive superheroes. This time around, though, it's a superhero video game based on a movie that is based on a comic book. It's no secret that licensed games can be hit or miss, depending on if they're more their own thing, like the Batman Arkham series, they can do well. If they're based on movies, that's where it can get a little bit tricky. If they're based on movies that are based on comic books, they can generally be better than if it's just adapted from a movie or TV show, or even a book in some cases. By which I mean a real book with pictures, not this kind, the comic book. Even though this isn't a comic book, it's a game. Anyway, Spider-Man 2 is one of those rare cases of being a video game based on a movie based on a comic book that knocks it right out of the park. With the voice cast being pretty much the same cast from the movie that the game is based on, Spider-Man 2 essentially follows the same plot as the movie, but there are some differences. For example, Bruce Campbell's narration is top-notch, from his narrating the game's events to providing voice clips for the many hints throughout the city, even including the amazingly poetic Ode to Spider-Man, which you should find and listen to. Being based on a great superhero movie is fine and all, but what really sells Spider-Man 2 as a game is the exploration aspect. There have been many video games for the web slinger, and as good as they are at making you feel like Spider-Man, they aren't quite near the peak of Spider-Man 2. There are a few things that feel as good as just swinging around the entire city of New York fighting crime, and even getting the chance to fight with the Spider-Man villains that weren't in the movie, such as Rhino and Mysterio. The combat system was reworked rather well from the previous game, allowing you to use pretty much all 4 of the main face buttons to land excellent combos and counters on your opponents. There's a variety of mini missions and crimes to solve, from stopping a speeding car to stopping a bunch of criminals from stealing from armed vehicles and jewelry shops. And then there's also the smaller stories too, like taking pictures of the Daily Bugle or delivering pizza. And the fights with Dr. Octopus in the game was so much fun. I can't quite put my finger on why, but they're just so enjoyable, feeling like the big clashes from the movie itself. In terms of superhero sandbox games, there aren't many quite as expansive or as enjoyable as Spider-Man 2. Sure, it might be my favourite superhero, but that aside, this is genuinely an amazing, spectacular game, and it's completely worth your time if you can find the time to play it. At number 6, we have this one. Yay! So, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. It's very difficult for a game series to deviate from its normal formula. I've brought that up a couple of times before. It's tougher still when the main character of said game that does the deviating isn't quite as well liked as the franchise's main protagonist, in this case that being Solid Snake. So, to change the genre, the main character, the style and the setting, and still make something absolutely awesome, it's something that only Platinum Games could have pulled off, and by Jove, they did it so damn well. Replacing the series' signature tagline with the new tagline of Lightning Bolt Action, a lot of people were pretty skeptical when Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance was first announced. I guess even I might have also been the same before I played the demo, which I loved. It didn't take me long to get the real game itself, and goodness me, it's just so much fun. Seriously, I think that we can all forgive Platinum Games for cancelling Scalebound when they have great titles like Metal Gear Rising, Bayonetta, and Vanquish to their name. Sure, like most Metal Gear games, the plot and story are absolutely bonkers, and Rising is no exception to the rule, especially considering that the final boss is a fictionalized senator of the United States named Stephen Armstrong, who looks like America in video game form. He really does. Anyway, the game itself. As I mentioned, there's not much story beyond the fact that you play as Raiden and your main mission is to stop an evil private military company called Desperado Enforcement, and much like Raiden's own team, Raiden's own team, Desperado has its own superpowered cyborg ninjas with cool weapons of their own. The boss battles with said cyborgs are just so much fun, and even the boss battles where you fight other things like giant-ass robots and such are also just so much fun. Speaking of the boss battles, a lot of people pick the final fight with Armstrong as the best one. I like that one a lot, I really do, but my favourite fight is the one with Jetstream Sam. It's a western setting, feeling like the classic Tenpei style of duel, but instead of cowboys with guns, it's cybernetic ninjas with swords. And the fight itself with Sam is just a lot of fun, and the music accompanying the battle is just fantastic. The entire soundtrack is actually quite enjoyable, and even though I don't like original scores that much for video games, the pieces of Revengeance are just fantastic. The combat and exploration are also a lot of fun, and you feel like a huge badass as you use a unique slicing mechanic to either go ham and chop your enemies into pieces or finish them with one precise, accurate strike. The boss fights are great, the combat is amazing, the dialogue is equal parts cheesy and awesome, and it's just a blast to play. Metal Gear Rising is just good proof of how a franchise can do something different and still be a lot of fun, and the game just feels like a breath of fresh air, really. If you're a Metal Gear fan or a Platinum Games fan, you won't be disappointed by this one. And number 5, it's this. Now we're going into the much bigger games. So, for those who are somewhat more uninitiated, the Deus Ex is a series that stretches back to 2000 with the most recent release, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, being released in 2016. Pardon me. Did I mention that Mankind Divided is only the 4th entry in the series and that it's freaking amazing? Well, it is, and it is. Having said that, as of writing this, I haven't completed Mankind Divided yet. I do still find it to be a fun game, but yeah. I mean, it took me a long ass time to complete this one, and goodness gracious me, do I enjoy Human Revolution. So the game came out in 2011, and 2011 is what I consider to be the last year where I bought pretty much every game that interested me. That was one of, this is one of them, Deus Ex Human Revolution is one of those games. And it actually became my favourite game of that year. There are many reasons for that, but first, story time. So the game itself is actually a prequel to the original Deus Ex, and instead of playing as JC Denton and LXD from those first 2 games, you play as Adam Jensen this time around. Jensen is the head of security at Seraph Industries, and during a routine mission, he and his girlfriend Megan Reed get blown up. Jensen survives, Megan doesn't, so Jensen gets a bunch of cybernetic upgrades to his body to help him rebuild. He basically pulled Seth Rollins. He was redesigned, rebuilt, and he does eventually reclaim justice against the bad guys who perpetrated the aforementioned blowing of things up. Having said that, the actual boss fights are a little bit clunky, but the game itself is still really good. The graphics are just amazing, and I'm a guy that doesn't care for graphics much, but they're already fantastic in-game, and they're taken to beautiful new heights when it comes to a full-fledged FMV. Also, Human Revolution is one of those rare games where your choices do affect the game's outcome. I wonder if we're going to revisit that formula again before the end of the list. I mean, yeah, we are, but you don't know what games I've got left on the list, unless you talk to me and listen to my ramblings, in which case it's all completely pointless. Anyway, back to Human Revolution. So I covered the graphics, and I would like to cover the story more, but let's talk about the gameplay really quick. You get to choose right from the get-go if you want to go in guns blazing or stealthy, and whatever you choose will sort of influence your weaponry in a way. You can blast your enemies with shotguns and machine guns and cut them up with your wrist blades, or you can stick to a stun gun and just knock enemies out cold and try to be a bit more sneaky about it. Also, the upgrade system is just awesome. There are so many options for how you want to play that you'll be pretty spoiled for choice. As for the story, whilst it is true that you get revenge on the cyber terrorists that tried to kill you in the first place, there is a much deeper vein to things, and I can't say too much without spoiling it. But I will add that I do like the segregation aspect with the regular humans waging war against the enhanced humans. With that in mind, just be careful you start trusting in the game, and that's all I'll say for now. But you can trust me when I say that this game is pretty good, and the more choice and awesome gameplay options will keep you occupied for hours on end, so, give it a shot if you can. Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity? Well, according to Google, it's the state of being mentally ill or mad and ties in with extreme foolishness and irrationality. And also happens to be the inspiration for one of the most chilling video game villain monologues and performances in a long damn time. So that's Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3. But before I go on more about this game, I want to take a moment to appreciate Michael Mando's amazing performance as Vaas Montenegro, one of the game's main villains. He's possibly one of the best villains ever in video games, and I know that a lot of people like to give that up to Handsome Jack from Borderlands, but I'm not a Borderlands fan. I tried getting into it, and Handsome Jack just really annoyed me. He wasn't nearly as endearingly psychotic as Vaas, so yeah, that's my opinion. Anyway, Far Cry 3. To say that I was anticipating this one is an understatement. Sure, I'd heard of Far Cry 2. I think I even played a demo for it, but it just didn't interest me that much. Far Cry 3 is a totally different beast in comparison. You play as Jason Brody, and you and a bunch of your friends decide to spend all your money on a cruise to an island and go about being a bunch of idiots with said money. Problem is, the island that you wind up on is full of pirates who kidnap your friends, so you get to rescue them all. Lucky you. But it's not that simple. There are a fair few bad guys between you and your loved ones. The three main ones that you have to deal with are Australian Hunter Buck, the pirates leader named Voss, and the South African main big bad of the game named Hoyt. As good as Buck and Hoyt are as villains, Voss just takes the cake. In fact, Far Cry 3 is some of the most memorable characters in video game history, from the stoner named Oliver to Jason's younger brother named Riley. In fact, it's not bad enough that all of this happens when it does, but you're embroiled in a war between the Rook Island Pirates, which sounds like a basketball team, and the Rakyat Tribe, who are the good guys. One of the members of this tribe, named Dennis, gives Jason a cool tattoo, which can be added on to with each upgrade that you get, giving you new abilities and ways to fight in the game, from your combat to firearms to healing and needle effects, which help you hunt better, basically, both humans and animals. In fact, even the side missions of this game are fun, and they serve as good building blocks to help Jason to become a better character, not to mention allowing you to hold more ammo and giving you better prices at shops. It's just really handy. The gameplay is a first-person shooter, and the hallucinogenic sequences are just breathtaking to be a part of, but it's the themes of insanity and survival that help out hugely with the game's story. How far are you willing to go to save your friends? What lengths will you go to just to protect the ones that you love? And most importantly, can you keep your mind intact and not go too deep into the deep end? That was worded terribly. But to be honest, only you can answer those questions. Get the game for yourself to see what your result is. You might just be surprised. So it's very hard to do a top 3 in a list like this. I did kind of bang notes between what should be number 3 and between this and Far Cry 3, but if there's one defining factor that sold Sunset Overdrive at number 3, see what I did there, it's the fact that it's just so damn fun. In fact, it's possibly the most fun video game that I've ever played. For one thing, it was made by Insomniac, who are known for creating games with crazy weaponry, but there's crazy weaponry, and then there's absolutely batshit insane weaponry. I mean, honestly, can you think of another game that gives you a gun that launches explosive teddy bears? What about a weapon that summons satellite lasers? Or perhaps a shotgun-like weapon that, while looking like a penis, it shoots fire in a short burst. I'm not even making that up. All those weapons do exist, and Satellite Laser is one of the game's DLC packs. Well, part of one of them. Speaking of the game, let's talk about it. The story is kind of non-existent, but there is a basic concept there. An energy drink with an untested chemical gets shared at a party, and those that drink it become zombie-like creatures called the OD. Your job is to find the original source of the energy drink, and stop it. There are 3 factions to deal with: the OD, the group of anti-corporate humans called Scabs, and the evil corporation that they're rebelling against in Fizco, which often use high-tech robots to try and stop you and your hero. Well, to stop your hero, basically. Not to stop you specifically, like you're not in the game. If you were, that'd be kind of awesome. Your hero has no name, but he or she can be customized to look however you want them to. The wide range of clothing options is pretty handy, growing with each main mission, side quest and challenge that you do, not to mention, like new types of hair, accessories, things you can wear on your head, like bottoms, shoes, stuff like that. And that also applies to the weapons as well as something called amps. Amps are basically your power-ups, and you can customize them to how you want to play. You have amps for traversal, weaponry, melee, healing, just so many brilliant options. And speaking of the traversal, it's one of the biggest selling points of the game. Being able to wall ride, grind on rails, dash in the air, flip on poles, vaults, and water slide. It'll get you to wherever you want to go in the game, and mixing that all up whilst in shootouts is just a lot of fun, and it's also extremely rewarding. There are also some cool characters such as Walter, Callista, Two-Hat Jack, and my favourite in Floyd, the man responsible for the creation of the amps. The video game sandbox world is fantastic and a lot of fun to travel around in. I mean, sure, you can fast travel, but why would you want to if you can water slide and dash and stuff like that? The soundtrack is also pretty good, with a good punk rock feel to it, and it sounds great as you go through the vibrant metropolis that is Sunset City. The game also has a comic book effect with almost all the weapons. It's just got a great sense of humour, sometimes becoming a bit too self-aware, but not much. Hell, it gets to a point where your main character uses their amp bar to impale a mutated OD dragon. That is how awesome it gets. Sunset Overdrive is a lot of fun, and whilst it doesn't have the strongest story, it's just a blast to play. The mission types are rewarding, the guns are fun to use, it's visually stunning, and it's a lot of fun to just travel around in. I hope that there's a sequel on the way, because there's been rumoured for a while that there will be, and if there is, then you'll better get playing the first one. Yeah, it's important. It's education. Do it. At number 2, we go from the most fun game I've ever played to quite possibly the only game to ever make me question myself as a person as I played it. So Spec Ops The Line is seen by so many people as your stereotypical grim, gritty, realistic war-style first-person shooter. Well, it's third-person actually. The difference is that Spec Ops should be the benchmark for that particular style of shooter, and the fact that I'm encouraging people to try it out already without speaking too much on it so far can only be a good thing. With that in mind, let's talk about the game itself. First of all, it's actually not the first in the Spec Ops series, as all games so far are kind of similar to all the other war shooters of their time, like Medal of Honor and Call of Duty. You know, the early Call of Duty before people began realizing they were just recycling it. And to be honest, it's kind of weird to bring up Call of Duty and Medal of Honor to compare over Spec Ops, because despite Spec Ops coming out in 2012, I didn't get my hands on it until about a year later. See, the main reason that I wanted to play it is because of Ben Yahtzee Kershaw, and he put this game at the top of his year-end best loved list in 2012. He put 2012's Medal of Honor Warfighter on the bottom list, and there was a COD game in 2012, but there was no ninth list. So, still, 2012 was a year mired in so many war-style shooters, and for Spec Ops The Line to be the standout game is just beyond belief. Or is it? Well, not really, so let's actually talk about the game itself. You play as Captain Martin Walker, leader of a small Delta Force trio consisting of himself, Staff Sergeant and Tech Expert Jonathan Luca, and First Lieutenant and Demolitions Expert Alfonso Adams. The three are drawn to a sandstorm wrecked Dubai via a distress signal from Colonel John Conrad, the man who led the fictional battalion, the Dan 33rd, and saved Martin Walker's life many years ago. Unfortunately, most of his men died in the Battle of Dubai, leaving Conrad to go a bit... Okay, let's be generous and say he's a few crayons short of a full box. Anyway, the game goes from a rescue mission to a survival game, leaving your three heroes to fight for themselves against, thankfully, rogue American soldiers. It's nice to have a shooter that doesn't pit the big, strong, bald eagle American against the often stereotype inferior minority, so that's all well and good, but then something really, really bad happens. It's one of those rare moments during the game where you don't get to make a choice, as the game makes it for you, and all I can say is holy shit. In fact, that's all that I will say about that. I don't want to spoil anything about this game too much. As for the gameplay, it's nothing new. It's cover-based shooting, some tactical stuff thrown in there as you can command your fellow to snipe or throw a grenade to clear enemies out. And rather uniquely, you can use sand to your advantage. Shoot out a glass window of ceiling below an enemy and watch them get buried in a pile of sand. The gameplay is more there as a building block throughout the story, because the story of this game is just fantastic. You know you feel like a monster when the game's loading screens go from giving you tips on playing you to asking you one very important question. Do you feel like a hero again? So here we are. Number one. Finally at this point, I know that a lot of people might disagree with the choice, especially considering how much better the series got on as it went on. Okay, so 2 wasn't great, but I still really enjoyed it. However, here it is. Devil May Cry, the very first one. I think that the rest of the series just wouldn't be as big as it is if it weren't for the first game, which to this day still plays like an absolute dream. I've said in the past that if I had to pick from the whole series, I would pick Devil May Cry 3 as my favourite, but if I had to pick from video games as a whole, I'm going with the first iteration. This game was the first I played where you can mix up sword play and guns, and few swords and guns combos are as iconic as the mixture of Rebellion and Ebony and Ivory, sorry. Okay, so the sword was called Force Edge in the first game and not Rebellion, but still, technicalities. Anyway, in the game you play as Dante, a bounty hunter specializing in killing demons, spirits, and all sorts of other evil things and stuff. As he's chilling all up in his humble abode, a woman named Trish, who looks like his mother, either rudely barges him, has a fight with him, and tells him about a job on a place called Melee Island to stop a powerful demon named Mundus. And with his tools and talents, Dante must not only stop Mundus, but also several other demons, including dog-like demons made of shadows, gigantic evil bugs, murderous puppets, a giant lava spider, and a huge bird that can use electricity. In short, I really love the design and art style for this game. It's very gothic, and the monster designs are just fantastic. Even to this day, they still blow my mind. That's not to take away from Dante either. With the mix of his red coat, white hair, and cool attitude, the game isn't only my favourite of all time, but also has my favourite video game character of all time. To be honest, there really aren't many other heroes besides Dante and Trish for this game, but with Dante being a great character on his own, you don't really need much else, really. Dante, being half human and half demon, has many cool abilities, including strength, speed, agility, a healing factor, and really good reaction time, but his best power is the Devil Trigger. I damn near lost my mind when I first saw the Devil Trigger. The scene where he gets impaled by the Elastor blade and rises back to life, switching between his human and demon form, is one of my favourite scenes in gaming history. It elevated the game from a cool shooter / brawler mix to, well, I don't really need to say it again. The music for this game is great as well, having a noise gothic metal feel to it in a way. The voice performances are okay, but they're not bad for their time, so I'll give them a pass. The puzzles in the game are a lot of fun too. The story builds up quite well despite being kind of basic, and the gameplay is very innovative and a lot of fun. The character designs, the boss battles, the music, the setting. This is the first game to really introduce the concept of killing with style, and whilst that did set a trend for future games around its time, very few do it quite as well or as rewarding as the original. And if you still doubt me, go and see for yourself. Devil May Cry is deserving of its status as a great franchise, and whilst we have been teased about a new one for a while, at least we can still enjoy this one and all the others while they're still around. And that'll about it. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you didn't, well, I'm not going to be too fussed either way, you know? We all got opinions. But I do have an announcement, though. I think I've said it before, but I'm saying it again. The debut episode of Water Concept will cover both the House of Golden Bones albums by Stone Sour. Pardon me. It'll kind of be a super episode, but since I'm doing Water Concept more as a side thing, it won't have its own series, and it will be done basically whenever I can be bothered with it. So I'll see you all then. Take care, and thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all this weekend, because there's a UFC on. So, yeah. Bye-bye, and thank you. You're awesome.